Good evening and welcome to the Gold Goats and Guns Hour here on YouTube and DLive. My name is Tom Luongo. I hope everybody's having a great evening. And we've got a lot to talk about, as we always do. So I'm going to wait a couple seconds to let people get situated. Tonight's discussion, we're going to center on the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, hosted by Russia every year, and Vladimir Putin. We need to talk about that tonight. We need to talk about all things kind of internationally related. There's a lot of little things going on, but at the same time are big things as well. So want to make sure that we're up to speed on that. I was going to talk about the markets and whatnot today in relation to the jobs report, but I decided against that. And so if I'm a little late, well, hey, I'm a little late. I don't really, nothing I can do about it. As always, you can find my work over tomluongo.me. You can find me on regularly scraped over at places like Zero Hedge. I also write for strategicculture.org as well as moneyandmarkets.com as well. And you can follow me whenever I'm asked to tweet over at TFL1728. And you can please like and subscribe what we've got going on here. I don't expect the channel to grow at this point. It's pretty obvious that we're going to be squelched to hell and back again in light of the latest crackdown by Google in every way. I can tell that the traffic stats on my own blog have absolutely changed in the last couple of weeks. Software seems to work differently every time I log in. I'm not really even sure what's happening anymore, but we'll continue to do what we're doing for as long as we can, and we'll go from there. All right. So, and a big shout out to everybody who has downloaded, installed, and continues to use the Brave browser to try and break our monopoly, the Google monopoly on ad-based internet content creation. So let us give a big shout out to that. The donations this month were quite generous given the level of interaction given the number of people that are involved with it at this point. And notice today that my latest article, which mentions this on Zero Hedge, and we saw over 100 downloads and over 100 downloads and over 60 installs just today alone from the article on Zero Hedge. So that's great as well. So let's get started, shall we? Let's talk about Russia, and let's talk about China, and let's talk about the United States, and how there's a lot of little events took place this week that kind of signal that there's a lot of changes happening. And there's a lot of, if you were worried or if you were confused about what the long-term plan was going to look like, if you were thinking that tomorrow that tomorrow or next week or the week after there was going to be a trade deal signed between the United States and China, you can forget it. You can forget that there's going to be, and even if there is, you can forget that it's going to matter in the long run. The Chinese at this point have decided that the United States, it's very obvious that they've decided the United States is not a credible partner. And that even if Trump and Xi come to some kind of an agreement at the G20, because remember, this is a lot of what we're seeing now is all positioning for the G20 at the end of the month, when Trump is actually going to speak to people directly. He's going to speak to world leaders directly, Putin and Xi and a variety of others. So that's part of what we're seeing here. Okay, we're seeing a lot of pre-positioning for that, and a lot of negotiating tactics, or at least Trump thinks he's negotiating with these people. But to be honest with you, they have pretty much moved past the United States. Putin's speech at the SPIEF today, the St. Petersburg International Economic Forum, which is a major speech for him, along with his State of the Union address and along with the 3-hour Q&A session he does at the end of the year. It's important to understand that this is a major speech when he gives this. And Putin was quite clear. And given the level of interaction between him and Xi Jinping of China, it's pretty obvious that Xi agrees with just about everything Putin's saying, because most of what Putin said was the United States has lost its way. It's gone from being a champion of free trade and win-win and liberal democracy and liberal, in a classical liberal sense, liberal economic development into one of coercion, threats, intimidation, and sanctions, tariffs, and the whole 9 yards. We had this incident earlier today with the U.S. Navy and the Russian destroyer out in the Sea of the Philippines, right off the coast of the Senkaku Islands. A clear provocation on the part of a clear opportunity here taken to try and generate a headline by, I think, the U.S. Navy, knowing full well that they did nothing to get out of the way of a Russian boat that was clearly on a particular headed path, and they just kind of parked themselves right in the Russian boat's path and didn't move. And at the last minute, the Russians had to veer out of the way. That's the most likely story. They would never have declassified that video that they showed if that wasn't the case. If they weren't trying to gin up an incident, and we always do this. So, but a lot of deals were signed between the Russians and the Chinese, but the big ones, of course, is that they're going to cooperate in every way to cut the dollar out of bilateral trade between Russia and China. That means an integration of the two countries' banking systems, most likely cross-border payment systems, meaning Russia will gain access to China's Union Pay, and China will gain access to Russia's Mir payment system as well. Yes, the U.S. did violate right-of-way marine laws. It was marine rules. It was absolutely ridiculous. So, and moreover, Trump also embraced Huawei. Not Trump. Putin immediately turned around and embraced using Huawei to roll out their 5G network. Now, this is interesting. I was watching a clip from the news with Rick Sanchez on RT, and a guy who's an American who's usually better than this was all complaining, saying this is bad for Russia. They're opening up their markets too much to China. This is like kind of standard freaking Heritage Foundation crap that he's actually spewing. And this guy in particular, I can't remember his name, usually doesn't do this. I've seen him 3 or 4 times. He usually doesn't do this, and saying, oh, and it's bad that they're going to use Huawei's stuff because now Putin's just going to give them all this intelligence information. I'm like, no, it doesn't work that way. Actually, it's the other way around. There's no way in hell that Putin would allow Huawei's 5G technology in his country if it had hardware level backdoor access to the Chinese government. Because remember, Putin has banned Microsoft products. He's banned Intel products. He's banned most U.S. chip manufacturer, chip technology in Russia to be used by the Russian government. So, it's a ridiculous way it's a ridiculous spin on the scenario. There's no way in hell that that Putin would allow this to happen if the code wasn't clean. So again, I go right back to what I've been saying for months about Huawei, which is that the reason that they're being persecuted is not for stealing technology. It's because they refuse to install an NSA backdoor into their network so that the NSA can spy on everybody. And it's ridiculous. And that's where we are. So, is it tea or coffee? It's coffee. It's decaf, but it's coffee. So, yeah. So, Putin's speech, there's a great article up on RT right now, and I'm actually going to read bits and pieces of it because many of the quotes from it are really, really good. And I want to read a couple of them here because they're important. The article is called 7 Times Putin Apparently Trounced the U.S. at the St. Petersburg Forum, and I'm going to read this one. So the U.S. hegemony contradicts the aims of humanity's future. When universal international rules are replaced by laws, administrative and judicial mechanisms of a single country or group of influential states, like the U.S. is doing now by extending its jurisdiction to the entire world. And Editor's note, so is the EU in every way, manner, shape, and form. Such models contradicts not only the logic of international communications and the realities of the emerging multipolar world, but more importantly, it doesn't fit with the task of humanity's future. Now, let's talk about that for a minute. It's really important to understand what Putin's saying here. He's saying flat out that they're not going to accept any unilateral declarations by the United States that it's our way or the highway. They're not, and using the dollar as a pressure tool, which is his next point. So deep changes require adaptation of international financial organizations, reconsidering the role of the US dollar, which after it became international reserve currency, turned into the tool of pressure of that country, which issues it on the rest of the world today. Well, Vlad getting on this bandwagon now, he's about 40 years late. We've been using the dollar as a pressure vehicle through the World Bank and the IMF and a variety of other post-World War II institutional institutions for 40 years. He does know this, by the way. Remember, Putin came to power because of an attempt to frame Boris Yeltsin with the theft of $7.5 billion worth of IMF money, right? And Martin Armstrong goes over that story all the time, which, by the way, Edmund Saffer of Republican National Bank and our favorite friend Bill Browder were intimately involved with. And so what Putin's saying here, we all know that the Russians are de-dollarizing their economy as much as they possibly can. They're about 25% de-dollarized. They've certainly removed the dollar from most of their foreign exchange reserves, which by the way, at this point, total nearly $500 billion. FYI. And that they're buying gold like mad in order to protect the ruble and to protect the value of the savings of the Russian people by protecting the value of the ruble. By protecting the value of the ruble, they protect Russian savers. Okay? It's very important. And so with Russia and China going out of their way now to say without equivocation, they are going to lessen the use of the dollar and as much as they possibly can in their bilateral trade, which is, by the way, growing at somewhere between 25 and 35% a year. That's a big deal. Okay. Yeah, and there's also another point of it. Well, Stoyanovich brings up the point that the Chinese companies are supposedly moving to Russia to bypass U.S. sanctions. That's actually just been a discussion. It's actually one of those things that was a talking point floated by some Russian officials on that subject. But I don't know that that's actually happening yet. But I wouldn't put it past them to move Chinese companies into Russia, form joint ventures, and then be able to have better access and closer access to European markets, because at some point the European Union is going to lift sanctions on Russia. Read something else today as well, that the Russians I think they're planning on just laying the rest of the Nord Stream 2 pipeline, regardless of whether or not the Danes give them a friggin' permit or not, and then let the Danes sue them. But, and let them sue them in international court. I'm almost feeling like that's what the Russians are going to do, and that Germany is going to have to go ahead and Germany is going to have to go, be forced to go along with it at some point. So, and I'm just, it's really, really funny. Another thing to think about, and I'll get back to the Putin speech in a minute, is that the Russians are looking to double their agricultural exports in the next 5 years. They did about $25 billion in ag exports last year. They're looking to move that up to $45 to $50 billion by 2024, which is something they absolutely can do, and most of that money will go to China. I have to remember that one of the casualties of this trade war that Trump has provoked with China is that once the market share is gone for U.S. companies, it's not coming back. It's not like all of a sudden we're going to, we'll take the tariff off, let's do business again. Business will be gone. The business that matters. I mean, if they still want to, print cardboard for board games and whatnot, well, that's fine. Whatever. None of that has to be done none of that has to be done in China, and I'm sure the Chinese will take some of our orders, but of the structural stuff, the oil, the gas, the food, those markets, they're not coming back. The strategic metals, they're not coming back. So. The Venus Project on DLive says that trade wars typically feed actual wars. You're absolutely right. They usually foment actual wars. I don't know that we're at a point here where everybody involved here is a nuclear power that can blow up the world multiple times over. I fundamentally believe that everybody here involved is not going to go to war, and any kind of sincere war, which would threaten each other's livelihood at that level over a trade imbalance in soybeans. I just don't buy it. Matter of fact, the trade imbalance in soybeans is going to go away by virtue of the fact that we're not going to plant any soybeans this year. And there's going to be even worse weather out in the Midwest, and it's going to be just going to be absolutely horrible. So, I am going to get to people's comments more directly that are orthogonal to this or off topic in about 5 minutes. So let's get back to Putin's speech, and then we'll keep going. So all of this pressure that the United States is putting on people, all of these sanctions. Again, the Trump can't go 24 hours without sanctioning somebody. Can't do it. Had to put sanctions on more Iranian companies today to keep them from being able to export any oil. So what Putin said about this is that they're turning the global economy into a battle royale, a fight without rules. And this is the way Trump is acting. And when you act as if rules don't apply to you and that there are no limits on your behavior. Oh, by the way, we could segue right into the Google Vox apocalypse if we really wanted to, and how liberals absolutely believe that there should be no barriers on their behavior whatsoever, including taking out people whom they disagree with politically. But once you cross that line, you're never going to get back the trust of people on the other side of the market. You have to remember that trade is voluntary. It's not this is not something, well, they need us and so they'll trade with us. No, eventually they'll just go, fuck you. We're done. Fuck you. But we have good products and we will, no, fuck you. We're not doing any business with you anymore. But it's not our fault. It's the government. I don't care. You let your government do this. You, the CEOs of Intel, you, the CEOs of ARM, you, the CEOs of Google and AMD and ExxonMobil and Ford and the rest of them. You and 3M and Alcoa, the rest of you. You didn't stop it. You didn't put a brake on him. You didn't put a brake on your entire political system to put a brake on him and his administration. No, as a matter of fact, you cheered while this was going on. Sorry, the contracts aren't coming back. Yes, Jose Sanchez, you're absolutely right. I've been on that point for months now as well, saying, look, the dangerous part about this is that you're turning yourself into an unreliable actor on the world stage. And when no one trusts, when trust breaks down, commerce stops. And got news for you. This morning's jobs report, which was horrific, is just the beginning of what's coming. Just the beginning, economically. The only reason the markets were up today is on the hope that there will be increased dollar liquidity. The markets are blackmailing the Fed into lowering rates as quickly as possible. Next point by Putin is that now we're waging the first technological war of the digital era, and that gets you to Huawei, saying, look, we're going to, if we can't compete to Trump's message to the world is that, look, if we can't compete in bleeding edge technology that is structural to the world's business, well, then we'll just shut it down. and then we'll blame the other guy for stealing our technology. Like, it's ridiculous. And it's actually, it's not just ridiculous. It's actually embarrassing at every level. We as Americans should not be acting this way. Okay? Our businesses don't want to be treated this way by Trump. They don't want to be protected. That's this way. That's not what they want. So, and because of all of this, the United States has completely lost its way. It's worse under Trump than it ever has been, and it will continue to get worse until the political system here falls apart. I think that's the general thesis. One last thing I wanted to mention before we get out of here, I got out of this mode, is I don't know if you saw it or not. I saw it on my Twitter feed a couple days ago, but from the Lugansk Media Center, the LPR and Ukraine's representatives have confirmed the readiness to disengage forces and hardware to the disengagement zone number 1 in some place I can't pronounce. Doesn't matter. It's the last of the 3 zones stipulated in the Minsk II Accords from 2015 to as those were the 3 areas where they had to they both had to move out of that zone and deconflict that zone. So that's step number 1 to implementing most of, if not all of, the Minsk Accords. If you noticed, by the way, that Zelensky, the new Ukrainian PM, is being undermined at every turn by what's left of the existing Poroshenko government, the same way that Trump was, if not worse, because he's got to deal with American deep state actors along with all of these Ukrainian bureaucrats, and who are all in the pay of Poroshenko in the United States. And Poroshenko, by the way, is a long-time United States asset. All right, now that we're done with that, with the opening remarks for the evening, let's get to the comments. So I'm going to go back to the beginning and go look through and see what I've got here. Yes, everything about the U.S. Navy, about the naval incident today is very, very scary. It's like the United States was trying to provoke a war with Russia. Let that sink in for a minute. Israel is high tech and they use Huawei's equipment. Yeah, but the United States can't, because the United States wants to rule the 5G world, and Trump will, if Trump can't, and Trump believes that, MAGA means keeping other people off the market. He's a protectionist. You don't make companies stronger by protecting them. You don't make children stronger by protecting them. You don't make men strong. You don't make men stronger by protecting them. You let them. They have to go out and fail. They have to go out and work hard and compete and scrape and strive and not yield. Screaming under the coattails of Uncle Donnie, who just wants to be loved by everybody. Fuck him. I see the extensive coffee discussion going on behind the scenes. And yes, I drink mostly decaf anymore because I can't really. I don't really need it, and I'd rather drink coffee all day long and not freak out. So I'd rather drink 5 or 6 cups of decaf throughout the day and just be able to have that as my normal drink for the day is coffee. And I would rather that, and so just take 75 to 80% of the caffeine out of it and let me drink that. I'm good. Let's see what we got. All intellectuals drink coffee by the gallon. It's a law. Okay, Jim Ricitelli asked me, Tom, are you a fan of Lincoln? I'm not. Lincoln was a tyrant. In order for me to be accepted here down south, I had to learn the phrase Lincoln was a tyrant. And yes, I have read Tom Lorenzo. I've read the Real Lincoln. I haven't read his second book, Tom DiLorenzo's The Real Lincoln. I have read that. Recommend it highly. I have it on my shelf somewhere. Great book. I've not read his second book on Lincoln, but DiLorenzo is very good. Tom says, I've said it before, this trade war has nothing to do with bringing jobs back here. I agree. Trump is doubling and tripling the amount of H-1 visas that are H-1B visas. He's going to bring in skilled Indian and Chinese labor. He's going to bring all that skilled labor over here and set up the capital and set up the capital structure to allow the factories to be built here and then be stabbed by Chinese, not Americans. He don't give a shit. He'll just sell it to us that he is. We can go sweep the floors. That's the black pill. That's where Halsey is, by the way. All right, let's see. I don't see this trade war erupting into a real war, says Stephen Burnage, but I easily envision Iran or Syria spilling into a real war. Well, Syria already is a real war. I mean, we are actively engaged in open hostilities with the Syrian government forces, and every once in a while with Russian forces, though it's just not actually reported because no one wants a war with Russia. Oh, so user 13, getting onto the Google Adpocalypse thing, snuck in other controls as well during the Adpocalypse to remove/limit skipping of ads. This will kill YouTube dead. Yeah. Well, for those of us who absolutely want to have our channels monetized. No one wants to watch a one minute of ads to see a 4-minute video. Oh, whenever I'm stuck watching that forces me to watch an ad that's longer than 5 seconds on YouTube, I just skip the video. I refuse to watch an ad for a lot more than. Give me a full ad that's 10 seconds long and I'll watch it. Because it's not worth you're gonna make me skip the first 5 seconds. That's fine. You're gonna make me watch the first 5 seconds. I'll watch the last 5 seconds. Whatever. I don't give a shit at that point. But on a 3-minute video that I have to sit through a 35 or 50 second ad. And by the way, they do that on purpose. They actually want to try and limit your views. I've seen them put 30-minute infomercials on a 9-minute Tucker Carlson clip. Okay, they do it on purpose to get you to, and then you won't, and they won't let you skip it. Yeah, they do that on purpose so that you're not watching Tucker Carlson. That's another way they get around, having quote unquote editorial control. It's all such fucking horseshit. It's not even funny anymore. It is. Stephen says that he sees the trade war as negotiation and some red meat to throw to Trump's base. I understand that. I still think it's stupid and it's going to hurt everybody in the long run. So. Let's see. By law, Elvic Harrow says, by law, firms operating in China must aid the Chinese government in intel and espionage when requested. This includes American companies like Apple. Oh, by the way, that same law is in place here in the United States. The United States wants, if the United States issues a directive to a company to spy on somebody, it happens. It's the passive slurping up of all the data, of all of it. This is what the United States actually wants. In no way, Steven, am I saying that China is any better than the United States. Everybody has those same rules in place. And you're not going to get around that. The Russians have that in place. The Chinese have that in place. The Iranians have that in place. The US has it in place. The EU has it in place. Link a YouTube video in Discord. It plays them without the ads. Ooh, Jabba's Soapbox with the life hack of the night. Nice. I did not know that. Now there's a reason to do Discord. Okay, I'm going to skip over to the comments over on DLive, FYI. All right. So I got some stuff over here. I should deal with over here. Let's see. NBC had a headline that said, okay, so they were talking about stocks. The Venus Project says, I'm a little pee on lawn service, and I've replaced 12 people with the equipment I use today, i.e. the robots he uses today. 7 vending machines instead of a person selling my snacks and drinks. That's 19 people absolved of needing to cut grass for a living, of the indignity of having to cut grass for a living. Though I've done it and it sucks, but you know, when I was 16, cutting grass for a living, it was a great job. What the last point that Putin made was that, or actually he started off all of his remarks by saying the U.S. enjoyed a beautiful privilege for a long time, which he sugarcoats and says they didn't abuse. And now that the power has shifted a little bit, they're reacting in the worst way imaginable by trying to hold on to as much of that power as possible by threatening everybody, and that's the wrong way of going about it, which was wholly predictable. And I know that Putin knows that this was ultimately what we were going to do, but he still can lament it, and he can still try and get us to see clearly what we're doing. But under Trump, that's not happening. The system in America is broken, says Jose Sanchez. Same applies there. No going back. America is divided. Oh, if you think America's divided, go look at Britain. If you think of Britain's divided, go look at Italy. It's crazy. With Trump, all the Q people became true believers again. Oh, I know. It's insane. Make mercantilism great again. I love that one, Jewel 262. That's fantastic. Let's see. Tom, Canada election in October. Trudeau is considering blocking social media, including Twitter, before the election. Well, of course. He doesn't want anybody to say anything bad about him, so he can try and win. Worse than that, we're not going to be able to get any exit polling, communicate with one another, find out what's going on, share voter fraud stories, and document any of it. Of course. He's going to block all of it. Just, you know, scratch a liberal a little bit, find the totalitarian underneath every fucking time. Doesn't take, all you got to do is needle them on their little pet issue or where their bailiwick is, threatened, and then boom, they immediately explode into the biggest fucking authoritarian tyrants you ever met. As opposed to the, openly totalitarian, conservatards. But all right, going to go back. Stoyanovich, I'll get to the Italy comment in just a minute, but I want to get back to what I've seen in some other stuff over on YouTube. I'm sure there's a lot going on. Yeah, I like Tucker too. I like Tucker. Someone says that he likes Tucker Carlson. Yeah, he's got a lot of, but he's got some blind spots as well. Tom, how do I know Basel III so well? I don't really know Basel III that well, but I know it well. I know the highlights well enough to know what's going on with it. I've been studying what's going on with Basel III on and off for the last 7 years since they first proposed it, or 8 years since they first proposed it. The big thing is, the big thing about Basel III is whether or not gold is ever going to trade and is going to be able to be held as bank collateral with no discount. And that's still up in the air. That has not been fully implemented yet. I think it's been moved up to about 80%, up from 50%, so that's better. El Vaquero reminds us that slurping up all the data actually hurts when it comes to finding bad actors. Even if your detection algorithm is 99% accurate, you still get way more false positives than you will find bad actors. Bingo. It's just not, it's not good practice, but you're talking about people who are control freaks, who want all the data. And they're going to get it. They want to build, they're building pre-crime databases as we speak, guys. We're moving to Minority Report really, really quickly. Reminds us to fly them to the moon and let the Russians and the Chinese have the Earth after the West collapses. Just please fly me to the moon. Fly me to the moon and let me sail among the stars. I love that song. All right. With great power comes great responsibility, says Tom. To quote Peter Parker, the dollar is now a weapon and its reign will end because of it. Agreed. All right. I think I've actually caught up with all of the comments. You guys have been... Did I see Lee Stranahan on RT's In Question today? No, I didn't. That must have been great because he's Lee Stranahan and he's a fucking force of nature. I'm really worried about his health, though. He keeps being out sick. I keep having to do fault lines with just Garland. It's a good conversation, but, you know, I miss talking to Lee. And every time I'm on and he's not there, just it irks me a bit, you know? And it should. I consider Lee a friend, or at least, you know, a friendly acquaintance. Okay, so my latest article is about Italy. I don't know if you've seen it yet. I put it on. I put it out this afternoon. Oh, but before we get to Italy, Jim Ricitelli says, you know, thank you, Tom, for taking questions. I love doing the question thing, and since we don't do super chats here, but we do have other means by which to donate to the stream, donate to the channel, and donate to what I do. If you can, if I've read your question and addressed it directly as opposed in lieu of a super chat, you know, don't be shy. Tom likes money. No, really, Tom likes money. So, all right, just saying. But let's talk about the latest article for Italy, about Italy. Now, last week I wrote an article about Italy, worrying about the ins and outs of what would happen if the threats to the coalition itself between Lega and Five Star. And a lot of those have not seemed to come to pass, which is good. That really Lega and Five Star are a lot closer than people actually think, than the mainstream media wants you to believe. The real snakes in the grass are the president, Sergio Mattarella, the prime minister, Giuseppe Conte, and the finance minister, Giovanni Tria. Those guys are the troika, the domestic troika of evil within Italy's structure, and in fact have neutered the ability of Di Maio and Salvini to actually get things done, because Conte threatened he cucked out like 24 hours after the friggin' election, the European parliamentary elections, and said, you know, he told Salvini, tell me what the agenda is so I can decide whether or not I want to quit. Which is his way of saying, if you push forward a plan that will put us in conflict with Brussels, I'm going to quit and ask Mattarella to take down the government. And if you remember, back to last year, when they were trying to form the coalition, Mattarella kept inserting himself into the process in a way that he shouldn't, by stating, kind of like John Bercow, the British Speaker of the House, the Speaker of the House of Commons, keeps inserting his editorial comments about what he thinks of what the legislative agenda should be, even though he's not supposed to do this. And Mattarella is not supposed to do this either. Mattarella is just supposed to rubber stamp whatever the fucking dominant parties want. And they didn't do that. He didn't do that. He inserted himself in it directly, rejected government after government after government, until he finally got something that he could work with, which is basically he got to pick Prime Minister Conte, who's a fucking snake in the grass just like the rest of them are. They all work for freaking Brussels. And they're all working against Salvini and Di Maio. So how does that play out? It plays out badly for getting any kind of substantive change over the next couple of years. This is why last year it looked like Salvini had caved on the budget, but coming back from 2.4% of GDP back to 2.04% deficit, right, to get Brussels to calm down. That was all Conte forcing that onto Salvini, and they're going to play that same game this year, and they're going to do it over the flat tax. Salvini wants to radically cut Italian income taxes, okay, and go with a flat tax and spur growth from underneath, while going on an infrastructure spend. Now, here's the funny part about it all. Ready? The EU is freaking out and threatening fire and brimstone over $4 billion. That's it. Budget the size of Italy's, with an economy the size of Italy's, for $4 fucking billion, they're going to go to the fucking mat and put the kibosh on whatever it is that Salvini and Di Maio want to try and do to improve the lives of Italians. I don't agree with their entire legislative agenda, but I certainly agree with the flat tax. And given the state of affairs in Italy, they've got to do something about the infrastructure. And it's not going to get built, and it's not going to get built any other way. So it's absolutely imperative that you simplify the Byzantine tax system in Italy, that you spur small and medium business size growth and individual small business growth by simplifying the tax code. And at the end of the day, if they run a little bit long on the budget deficit, what's another $4 billion to the $2.3 trillion they already fucking owe? It's a fucking rounding error at this point. But the EU wants to maintain control and explain to everybody that they are in charge and not Italy and not these dirty fucking populists. And they're going to go to the mat over this in the same way that Trump is overreacting about the trade deficit with China and all this other crap that he's pulling. Every bit of this is all fucking immense overreaction and to little teeny things. And so when you see a powerful entity overreact to a teeny thing, that powerful entity ain't as nearly as fucking powerful as you think it is. It's a paper tiger because if it was confident in its power, it wouldn't act that way. So how it's going to play out over the course of the next couple of years is going to be a fight between them, between these guys and Mattarella isn't going anywhere. He's in power until 2022 unless they impeach him. Now there were a couple of calls to impeach him last year. If the government if these guys bring down the government and then there's a vote and Lega say comes in at around 35% and say 5-star were to rebound back to 20%, which would be really good, by the way. They come in around 22%, and then they form another coalition, but this time with Lega as the dominant party, and Lega takes most of the first past the post seats. Very important. Lega could easily wind up with 40% of the Italian parliament. 5-star with another 20 to 22%, and then they would have the ability to impeach Mattarella, get rid of fucking Conte, tell fucking Tria to go stuff a dildo up his ass, and then tell Brussels to go pound sand. And then things get interesting. I don't give that a high probability, though. That's the problem. All right. Someone asks, Jonathan Gillespie, how could you ask that question? They have a fucking ridiculous progressive tax system now that taxes investment. That destroys, progressive tax systems are terrible. They destroy investment. They destroy growth and investment. A flat tax is far fairer. Russia has a flat tax system. It's far fairer. It means that once you get past middle class, you don't pay any more income taxes. Your income tax rate goes down because you're no longer paying Social Security and Medicare. Someone asked, was it Arkvault asked, nice Rickenbacker bass in the background. Was that new? No, that's my 35-year-old. That's my 1985 Rick 4003. That's pretty much shut the fucking hell back again. It functions. It still plays. It doesn't play as well as it used to, but it's there. No, that's like my best friend. He's been back there he's been over my shoulder for years. I moved everything around the bases around the other day. I'm teaching my daughter how to play the bass, by the way. It's awesome. She's actually taking to it. It's great. I bought her one of these new. I bought one of the new Ibanez mid-scale basses or 32-inch scale. I'm gonna go off in Geekland now. I don't want to talk about fucking politics for the next 5 minutes. Tough shit. Because this stuff's cool. I'm talking about turning my daughter into a musician, or at least getting her to hear stuff. And so I bought, and it's off camera. You can't see it, but let's see. There it is. So you'll note that that's a slightly shorter scale bass than the P bass that's sitting next to it. So that's a 32-inch as opposed to a 34-inch scale bass. It's a little shorter. And as I get older, my hands are getting a little thick. So I bought one for myself, really, but I thought about it. I'm like, maybe I can get Sophie to, pop up and maybe she'll step up over the summer and do that and learn how to play. So I started giving her lessons this week. We started very simply showing her proper technique, showing her, she's going to wind up playing with a pick because she has fingernails and she doesn't want to cut them. I'm like, so much easier to play with your fingers, so much easier to pluck than the picks suck. But she's trying. She's getting there. It's slow. It's she plays for about half an hour. We practice together about half an hour or whatever. But it's great fun. I haven't I've tried teaching her how to play the guitar in the past. It was a miserable failure, and all of that. But yeah, she's taken to the bass so far, and she really likes it. So I bought her some proper bass picks, and give me an excuse to buy musical equipment. Only a bass player or guitarist too. I mean, I fuck around on the guitars, Jules 262, but I'm not really much of a guitarist. I mean, I play, but I'm not much of a guitarist. I played the drums for a long time too, and I was a pretty good drummer. So, but I don't. What do you call? But my first love, and actually the instrument that I've got like the most meat on it's with the bass. I've been playing the bass since I'm 15. All right, let's see. All right. You and your daughter, I have checked out Rick Beato's channel. There's a lot of good stuff on music theory there. He's entertaining. He's not bad. There's a lot of good guys out there. Scott's Bass Lessons is very good. I've watched a lot of stuff, certainly on guitars. Like good, there's a lot of good guitar teachers on the internet. There's only a few good bass teachers. I don't need anybody to teach me how to play the bass. I know how to play the bass. I know how to play and play professionally, effectively. I'm not, I'm not Geddy Lee or anything. I can do sessions work if I need. What's Conti been like as Jonathan? What do you think Conti's been like as Italian PM? Did you not hear he's been a fucking asshole? He's been a fucking asshole. He's been nothing but an obstruction to them getting anything done. It is music theory from a rock perspective, and also from a rock producer's perspective. Rick Beato is very much a producer's perspective, right? And a player, but very much a producer first. Studio production guy first. Always thinking about things from that perspective, and not just thinking about things from the perspective of just playing for the love of playing. So that's on tax rates. The interview Tom mentioned the other day on the pension crisis suggested mutual and state tax increases to help bridge pension gaps actually exceed the Trump tax cut. Yes, that is very true. The question is, can your goats play guitar and bass? No, they can't. And Rush is awesome. If you've not watched my, I have a video for 36 minutes of me very self-indulgently ranking all 19 Rush albums and talking about them in great detail. It's on the channel. Go find it. It never gets any views. Google one, index it. Tom's band is Boomer Rage. No, dude. My band is called Beer, Guns, and Pussy. It's either Beer, Guns, and Pussy or Welcome to the Eschaton. I don't know if you guys have ever listened to Jello Biafra, but Jello Biafra, the former leader of the Dead Kennedys, had a great speaking album. I can't remember the name of it. I was called Lard. He had a band called Lard, and he did a lot of this stuff. And in there, one of Jello's speaking tour albums, he went over on names for bands, right? And it was fucking hysterical. It was like John Wayne on acid, Crushed Velvet Vivisection. God, there's so many good ones. Mondale! Half the guys in Deep Purple look like Walter Mondale. Can you just see the 5 fucking old guys, Walter Mondale's out there rocking out on the stage? It was fucking great. Not Boomer Rage. No, sorry. Have you ever heard of TVP, the Venus Project? Yeah, I have. I have heard of the Venus Project, and I think it's I'm gonna at the risk of pissing off a new follower, I'm gonna tell you that I watched, what was that, Zeitgeist and Zeitgeist 2 when they first came out. I remember watching Zeitgeist going, that's kind of cool. And then we got the Zeitgeist 2, and then y'all went off the fucking deep end about money, and I went, you're done. You're done. The whole idea of that we're going to have the end of scarcity is all horseshit. It's all horseshit. Because the whole thing about the Venus Project means that that you guys don't account for opportunity cost of a person's time. And it's fundamentally a flawed theory about how things work. Period. But I actually make fun of it all the time. Scarcity is not solved. Scarcity is all around us, dude. Everything. We have scarcity of time. Time. Time is the only true scarce natural resource. And when you understand, once you understand that, and you understand that money is the only thing that can properly coordinate a human need through time. And without it, society does not function. Period. Robots are not going to make it's not going to work. Go read the fucking culture novels by Iain Banks, for Christ's sake. And he believed in that shit. He actually wrote an entire friggin' future history of the planet, of the species, based on these arguments. And it was decadent and worthless and useless, and it didn't do anything. You can't strive without scarcity. Scarcity of time is ultimately what's important. No, I agree. And it's funny. It's funny that Zeitgeist actually was promulgated by Austrians and by libertarians. The first half of it. It was the biggest fucking bait and switch I've ever seen in my entire life. While I was watching so the second half of Zeitgeist came out, and I went, they had me right up until the last half an hour, and then they made this right turn about money. And I went, oh, you motherfuckers. You are so full of shit. It's coming out your eyeballs. It's just this fucking stupid Star Trek shit. It's horseshit. It's complete horseshit. Sorry. Yeah, the whole billions of robots thing doesn't matter. People still have to do things. And if at the end of the day, the billions of robots will eventually turn around and get rid of us because we will be an impediment to their efficiency. You can't get time back. And every day you waste thinking about the Venus Project is time you will never get back. Scarcity exists. It always existed, and it always will exist. The robots have to be maintained. The robots have to be built. The robots have to be thought up. They have to be programmed. They have to be maintained. They can all do it themselves, but then they don't need us. And then what do? We atrophy into sloth and inanity. It is only through the struggle against death and against time itself that gives our lives meaning. Otherwise, we just sit around all day and fucking jack off. You know, it's fun. Not going to get you nothing. I'm not going to argue this any longer. This is my channel. I'm not going to argue this with you. You're wrong. And that's that. We're done. It's just, that's it. We're done. So, did you see that Stiglitz gave a speech at the World Economic Forum about getting rid of paper money? Of course, Stiglitz is a fucking commie. Of course he wants to get rid of paper money. He wants to get rid of all money. He wants to go to pure electronic money issued by central banks so that the philosopher kings can run the world. Just like the Venus Project. They just want to be the pigs who are more equal than everybody else. Scarcity of good-looking women is the main driver of all economic activity. Now that I agree with. Wezzy, you've got it in one, dude. Dude, El Vaquero, you're never going to convince the left that scarcity matters, because they fundamentally so many leftists are so open and don't believe in having any boundaries on their behavior that they cannot understand scarcity, because they don't want to accept that there's a limit to what they can do. I fully understand that 5G is going to change the way we communicate, and that's actually going to do a great number of things to improve the entire world and the way and to break down a lot of the control systems that we're railing against right now. I see a great future in 5G networks. Don't get me wrong. The power to be able to literally peer-to-peer video streaming and not need platforms like YouTube. I get it. Rubini in front of Congress last year talking about Bitcoin was hilarious, because Nouriel Rubini is the biggest fucking Luddite I've ever seen. Rude Dude asks, what are your thoughts on the Belt and Road Initiative and how it will affect Europe and Asia? I think that the Belt and Road Initiative is termed by the United States and to a lesser extent the UK as China's colonial takeover of the world, because that's the way we see everything. that's our projecting our own colonial impulses on the rest of the world. I think Belt and Road is a perfectly reasonable project to bring Central Asia out of the Mackinder heartland, great powers struggle theory. It's China's way to finally break down 250 years or 200 years of sowing chaos in the heartland of the world, what Mackinder called the heartland, which is basically Central Asia, by stitching it together with new silk roads and new infrastructure that then belie the ability of Western powers to fuck with it. That's what China's trying to do with it. That's what China wants to do. It's ultimately a way, one, for them to protect their eastern border or their western border, and at the same time end that strife in the long run. Now, will China benefit more than everybody else by being the center of by being the place where the wealth all rolls up? Sure. Of course, that's what they want. So. The health concerns relative to 5G, I've heard about them. I only wonder if they've been overblown for a variety of. I don't buy any narrative I hear from anybody about anything anymore. So there's that. And when everybody's telling me the 5G is going to be like melt all our fucking brains, I'm just not buying it. It's kind of like when they say the world's going to end because of global warming, or we don't need to worry about anything because scarcity has been solved because the robots are going to do everything for us. Like, I read the Kim Stanley Robinson Mars books back in the 90s, and I rejected that argument then. This Venus Project shit is just retreaded communism from the fucking 70s. It's really sad, actually, because that shit doesn't work. Scarcity, while significant, is perhaps overdetermined, particularly by the libertarian stuff. Well, what we would say to that is, again, you have to understand why scarcity gives things value. Okay? And I urge everybody, if you're not currently a subscriber to the newsletter, if you do nothing else, subscribe to my newsletter for this issue that's going to come out probably Monday, if not Sunday night. Because I have a big, huge article in there that is well worth your $12 to understand the relationship of money and scarcity and how that functions and how that's going to propel us into the future. Now, I don't normally really pimp the newsletter this way, but I'm really proud of this one. This one's important. So, for those of you who don't believe scarcity has been solved, great, doesn't matter. Understand what scarcity actually is. This article does that in ways that even surprised me. Yeah, we were all supposed to be dead from Fukushima years ago, I know. Murray Rothbard, man, economy, and state, says all the marbles. Pepsi is not going to materialize just because you think about it. Nope. Nope, not at all. Thank you, Mark, for the economic stuff. I think, I honestly, this was a hard issue for me to write. I'll be honest with you. I was talking with my partner and editor about it. He gave me his comments back on the first drafts yesterday, and I said, thank you, because his comments were all really good. They were a lot less than I was expecting, actually, because I was expecting him to like tear me to pieces, because these were really ambitious articles. I had a hard time getting into writing this issue. I actually was like 3 days late with the end of it. I normally get it done much earlier, and then it sits on his desk for 4 days before we actually get it out the door. And I was late with it this month because I was really struggling with some of the ideas in this one. It's like what tact I wanted to take. But this is a very technical newsletter, or at least the middle of it is very technical. Yeah, Umpire's Post says, many of these new economic theories are just old stuff that never worked in the first place with a slightly different spin. It's like, it's like at the end of the day, the labor theory of value is just John Law's, let's make everything, let's peg the value of the money to the land or to this or that. None of that shit works. It just doesn't work. Everything is scarce. The shit that goes into your 3D printer, where did that come from? The plastic, where did it come from? It came from the oil. The oil's scarce. How did that oil come out of the fucking ground? I've worked in the oil industry, dude. Don't fucking tell me that it's not labor intensive and it's not human intensive. Even as we take humans out of some of these systems, we still have to have humans creating the systems and the things necessary to actually keep these things going. It's all scarce. It's all scarce. It's all scary. Now, sanctions? Yeah. The moon mission was communist. It was a government project. By definition, it was communist. Yes. You got it in one. Good. I'm so glad we agree. Everything. All government interventions are fundamentally just variations on fucking communism. Period. Period. And they're all bad. They all misdirect capital to the wrong, they misdirect capital by screwing with people's incentive structure. Fundamentally, so that capital is directed away from where people want it to go under equilibrium towards this new equilibrium created by the intervention of of government saying, well, you can't do that. So now you got to do this. And so now capital has to work around that, even though they still want to do A, but the government says, well, you can't do A the way we want you to do A. So we're going to put this roadblock B in front of you. And so in order to do A, you've got to go from C to D to A, as opposed to going from C to directly to A. That tomorrow, because tomorrow's my day off. So I got to get a bunch of stuff done. So there it is. I think I'm done. But yes, don't let anybody ever seduce you into thinking that time is not scarce. Because that's what money does. Money coordinates labor and capital through time. Okay? When people start making hand-waving arguments about how, we'll just get the robots to do it all for us because we don't need to worry about that shit anymore. Yeah. Where did the robots come from? Modern monetary theory is a tangent of communism. Debt is irrelevant so long as the interest on the debt is lower than growth. This is complete central banking mania. You're absolutely right. And it's all going to come crashing down. Only theories like this, the Venus Project and all this other crap, all that stuff can only come during an age of incredible asset inflation due to monetary madness. Once this all deflates, remember, folks, in the immortal words of Philip K. Dick, reality is that which, when you stop believing in it, doesn't go away. Y'all have a great night. This has been the Gold Goats and Guns Hour. If you like what you heard tonight, please give a like and subscribe down below. Even if you didn't like what you heard tonight, please give a like and subscribe down below. Tweet it out. Do whatever you have to do. Share it amongst your friends. I know most of you aren't social media savvy, but I don't care. And if you can, donate in some way. Install Brave. Use it. Give me a tip. Do whatever you have to do. Give other people the tip. By the way, the Duran is on Brave. You should give they're a verified publisher on Brave. You should throw them a tip. And everybody should inundate Zero Hedge and some of your other favorite sites saying, look, guys, I've got a tip waiting for you. Go get it. We'll talk soon. You be well. Keep your stick on the ice.